Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined this morning by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. And it's a new month, fellas. Spring ball, obviously, still going on. The Longhorns going to, of course, resume practice tomorrow. And before y'all talk about that, though, everybody be sure to tell us where you're checking in from and what you're drinking. But guys, spring ball, what's your thoughts as we head into this new month and as we get closer and closer to the spring game?
I'm ready to go. It starts again Tuesday. We believe that they'll get going around 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. Guys, they had a very physical practice, we're told, on Friday morning to end up the week. A lot of people on hand, a couple of recruits, including Kobe Sellers, defensive back out of Pearland's Shadow Creek, Josiah Sharma, who we'll talk a little bit more about later, defensive tackle out of Folsom, California, also on hand. But hearing a lot of different things, included a inside run session that Cedric Baxter apparently looked very, very good at and has been getting going on. So good stuff coming from the Longhorns right now. Recruiting starting to take a turn right now. April 6th, a big visit weekend coming up. Jerry Hamilton just broke some news a few minutes before we went on air about a big defensive line recruit that's coming in on that weekend. So all in all, Longhorns had a lot going on this weekend. Won the baseball series over Kansas State. Lost, however, in the Elite Eight to North Carolina State up in Portland, where somehow they had the wrong 3-point lines on two different ends. Yet coaches decided to keep playing. I mean, I don't know how that even works, man. I don't even know how that works. But long story short, they apparently sent two different 3-point lines of court to Portland. And Longhorns losing. They deserve to lose, though. NC State outplayed them, right? They outplayed them. But all in all, football top of mind right now going into Tuesday.
Bobby, you're getting a lot of questions about your hat, so you got to let people know. Okay. You get a lot of questions about your hat.
So this is I've been talking to this company for a long time because I love their stuff. It's called Duck Camp, and they are officially sponsoring the show now. I'll be wearing my nice. I've got like 3 or 4 other ones up there in the hat rack. Jerry and Blake, y'all are getting some too. We appreciate them and welcome them into the show. Good Austin-based group, by the way. I had lunch with them the other day at Crown and Anchor Pub while I was trying to get ready for one of our meet and greets that we're going to do before the spring game. So good stuff overall. I've enjoyed it working with them, but this is a redfish, my man.
Hey, by the way, if you're Xavier Worthy or AD Mitchell, your odds of getting drafted by the Chiefs went up this weekend.
Yes.
Just stay on the straight and narrow path here for the next 24 days, okay? Because your odds of being a Kansas City Chief just went through the roof. And by the way, NC State in 2 hours accomplished more than Texas A&M athletics has in over a decade. So congrats to NC State.
And Mike D, by the way, says North Carolina State basketball team's on a roll. It could be 2 colleges that have their men and women's team in the Final Four if UConn wins tonight. I believe the last time it happened was Duke and UConn.
And that proves there's hope for A&M out there for having success in sports, even though NC State did more than A&M has in over a decade. And like I said, 2 hours yesterday.
All right. Well, Bobby, you alluded to it, but Jerry, you've had a lot of recruiting news here lately, especially over there on TexasFootball.com. What's the latest?
Yeah, so Zion Williams, defensive tackle from Lufkin over in East Texas, told me late last night, we had a conversation that he plans to be in Austin April 6th with his mom, adding to a massive unofficial visit weekend coming up for the Texas Longhorns. There you see Big Zion, 6'4.5", 325, a near perfect over the ball player in the SEC. This is the type of guy you want to recruit. Seen him in person multiple times. 18 shoe, big old foot, man. I wear 13 and a half, and my foot looks small next to his. But a great kid. Just really, he's starting to scratch that surface, but he's not even close to where he will be. one day. That staff at Lufkin does a really good job with him, but he just has that 80-plus inch wingspan, those 10-plus inch hands on that almost 6'5", 325-pound frame. He's pressing the shot put out to about 46, 47 feet this year. I think they have district meet this week as well. So Zion Williams, that's going to be one of the fun battles. It's a Texas LSU battle. A&M's third, TCU's fourth. He's got that official visit to TCU scheduled for May 3rd through 5th. He'll be at Texas June 21st through 23rd officially. He'll be at the LSU spring game April 13th. And then he'll be at LSU for an official visit in June and probably A&M in June as well. But big news to get him and his mom back on campus here April 6th this weekend. That's coming on the heels of Josiah Sharma from Folsom making an unofficial visit Friday. I believe one of the very top defensive tackle prospects in the country. Forget about the rankings, throw them out. It's early on D-line. Those things kind of adjust and recalculate over time. But Josiah Sharma here, he's 6'3.5", 323, by the way, on a couple of his visits last week. He visited Alabama, Oklahoma, and then ended with Texas. His mom was on that visit to Texas, and you can see there now he is a high-level athlete at 6'3.5", 323. And when you talk to the Folsom staff who played against him last year at Indercrum High before he transferred to Folsom, when you watch the tape and you take everything you see here and you look at the offer list, which is Texas, Alabama, Georgia, most recent offer, Oregon, USC, all of them, right? The thing that impressed Folsom staff the most was his motor when they played him, and since he's been at Folsom. So if you take all of this and say the guy's got a motor, you have quite the prospect in terms of development. This was his first time him and his mom sat down with Steve Sarkisian and met Kenny Baker Friday. And what I was told was they were both extremely impressive. And Josiah Sharma and his mom left the Texas visit without question that he would be developed at the University of Texas. So Texas and Alabama, I think, are really fighting this one out. I expect the June 14th through 16th official visit. That would bump a Utah visit. Maybe that goes to the 21st, 23rd, but I'm expecting 14th through 16th as of today. But two of the best D linemen in the country. Texas had Sharma in on Friday. They'll have Zion in this week. And I'll tell you this, Malik Autry, the Auburn commitment, he's scheduled to be in April 6th. He was just at Florida. So while he's committed to Auburn, the visit process continues. Malik Autry scheduled to be in Austin. He's out of Opelika, Alabama. They put out a few players. Just go to the wiki page there, about 20 minutes from Auburn's campus. So this is kind of the recruitment you're up against there. But again, he's scheduled to be in Saturday, as well as likely to make a June official visit. We'll see on that. That official visits for him are really locked in right now, but we'll see if that adjusts. But schools aren't backing off Malik Autry. So some movement on the D line. Obviously, Texas had a great visit with Brandon Brown March 22nd. He'll be back June 14th through 16th for an official visit. And if you kind of look at that, some of those edge guys and some of those D line guys are going to be split between the 14th and 16th and 21st and 23rd in recruiting.
And then, Jerry, I know another note that was dropped over on TexasFootball.com. A lot of people already asking about, but wide receiver Doran Moore out of Duncanville. Can you give us the latest information?
CJ Vogel spoke with Doran Moore at the Texas Relays. Doran was in Austin, but his big visit, the visit to Texas, will be two of them. The key visit's going to be April 6th, this Saturday. He's scheduled to be in, and then he's also, those stats aren't impressive at all, by the way. And he's scheduled to also be in April 20th for the spring game and a June official visit. So again, Texas LSU got some battles coming up here, and Ohio State and Oregon are in it. But, you just wish Doran was a little faster. If he's a little faster, this video would move quicker. But one of the very best players in the country. He's explosive off the line. He's quick. He's fast. He can change directions. He can decelerate as well as he can accelerate. And that guy throwing in the ball, Keelan Russell, can get it to him on time as well, who will be at the spring game April 20th. So Doran Moore, 2 visits in April, official visit in June. There even has the high point. See, I think that's what makes Doran a special guy and a 5-star prospect. There's some guys that are run and catch receivers. There's some guys that are catch and run receivers, but he can do it all. I mean, he can catch the short ball and make you miss and make big plays. He can go get the ball in the air. He has great timing on 50-50 balls. He's long jumping, 24 feet this year, right around there. He's on that 4x1 100-meter team that broke a national record, but only finished second in the meet. So Doran Moore there will be in Austin twice in April, will be back in June. And again, we just hope he gets faster. If he gets faster, he's going to be really good.
Jerry, he needs to be faster than Rashee Rice.
Well, he definitely moved faster than Rashee Rice from what I saw on I-75 this weekend walking down the freeway on the video.
All right, guys. Well, before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about our sponsor, John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group.
Yeah, absolutely. John's a friend of the program, partner with us. While today may be April 1st, don't be fooled by some fast-talking investment or insurance salesperson regarding your financial future. Instead, let John Donovan, who is a certified financial planner and been doing it for 30 years now, do what he does, has been doing for Longhorn alums, employees, and families for such a long time, adhering to his fiduciary responsibility to provide you the very best in independent, non-proprietary investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to ensure that your best interests are always put first in everything he and his team at Longhorn Wealth will do for you. John's not only a certified financial planner, but also a proud Texas Ex's Life member. He and his wife and all 6 siblings are also proud UT grads. So avoid the foolishness of working with a non-certified financial planner or advisor, and give John Donovan and his team at Longhorn Wealth a call at 972-707-4900 or visit longhornwealth.net for your free 90-minute consultation with John to explore how he and his team can help you and your family achieve true financial independence and security. Hook 'em. Thank you for your partnership, John. 972-707-4900.
Hey, just a little update here. Just been exchanging some texts with Smith Orogbo, the edge out of A-Leaf Hastings, 4-star edge, who is one of Bobby's favorites in this 25 class. And he reiterated that June 14th, 16th official visit date is locked in. We had broke that news last week, and that he'll be in Austin April 6th. So I was just double confirming with some guys leading up. We'll be doing that, CJ and I, leading up to this April 6th visit weekend. But Smith Orogbo locked in. He's a big time pass rush talent.
All right, guys, we have a super chat here. I actually want to use the segue into what we're going to talk about next, but let's go ahead and get to that super chat from Douglas Scott. Thank you, Douglas. He says, is it too early to ask where to stay in Ann Arbor for the Texas versus Michigan game? I'm excited about going to the Big House, as I think Longhorn fans are.
So you're not. It's not too early. And Michigan is a relatively large campus, as large or larger than Texas, as far as spread out. Texas is more confined, in my opinion. And the football stadium is at one end of the campus. Full disclosure, my daughter thought about going to school to Michigan. And so we visited a couple of different times. And I stayed at the Graduate Hotel in Ann Arbor. And it is more close to downtown. I would not necessarily stay there for this coming game. I'm looking into getting a Airbnb/house because we've got several people going up. But make sure it's not a hard walk from there, from the Graduate Hotel over there. But I did enjoy that hotel. So I would give the hotel a plus, but I'm not sure it's exactly perfect for where you want to be.
And go ahead, Bob.
Petey in Richmond, real quick. Is Malik Autry related to NFL D lineman Danico Autry? I don't believe he is. I can double check on that. Danico's out of Albemarle, North Carolina. I don't think they're related, but I will double check on that.
All right, guys. Well, I said I wanted to use that to segue, and that's exactly what we're going to do to our next little segment here. Let's talk about odds for this upcoming season. More and more keep getting released as we inch closer and closer to the season, I guess I should say. So let's start with those Michigan odds. Texas, obviously very early, but a 2.5-point favorite at the moment. And I'm going to take this off just for a second here. Michigan, 2.5 point underdog. As you can see, the money lines there favor Texas. And then the over and under at 49.5 points for that game. What do y'all think?
So that's what, a 27-24 game is what they think it'll be? roundabout.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good. If you're a Texas fan being favored at the national champions away, I mean, think about that, Jerry. I mean, just the idea of Texas being favored in that game. We've been talking about how we think they're good and going to be good this coming season, the Longhorns. But the guys in Vegas, they don't kind of play favorites. They play by where the money is, right? Yep. And the fact that Texas is going to be favored in Ann Arbor in 4 or 5 months here, pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it'll be – I like the line. I like Texas at this point. I mean, a lot can happen, right? But I do think Texas is playing Michigan, as I've said before, that perfect time. Week 2, Michigan's going to have a new starting quarterback, whether it's the kid from Rockwall or it's somebody out of the portal in the spring. Brand new offensive line. I could see it being a lower scoring game, though, because the Michigan defense, and now Rod Moore, we're going to talk about that. That was a big loss for Michigan. 3-year starter at safety. So another guy that won't be playing against Texas that was a key in that national championship run for Michigan. He obviously had a knee injury about a week ago in spring, but Michigan's got the defensive front. They've got the athletes on defense to make this a lower scoring game. And Michigan's going to try to condense that game, in my opinion. What Michigan's going to try to do in that game. They don't want to try to get into a score fest with a more experienced quarterback and wide receiver room and offensive line. So Michigan's going to try to condense that game as much as they can, use both lines of scrimmage to make it a rough and tumble game in the Big Ten. I could see it being lower scoring, but I do like Texas.
And then the next one up, guys, that they have is Texas-Oklahoma. And I was, kind of surprised at how big the early spread was. 9.5-point favorite for Texas. Obviously, I mean, this is the biggest rivalry.
That scares Bobby Burton. He's shaking right now.
And then the over-under on that, 60.5 points. But are y'all as taken back as I am? Almost 10-point favorite early on in this game.
It sounds like 35-25, right? That's what they're expecting. 10 points favoring Texas. I'm not taken aback by that. Texas should have beaten by that amount this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, take away the turnovers, take away some mental collapses by the Texas defense in the first and fourth quarter. And Texas was at least 10 points better than that Oklahoma team.
Yeah, I think so. Look, again, Oklahoma, similar to Michigan, they have to rebuild their entire offensive line. Now, they got some good players out of the portal, but look, there was some news last week. Troy Everett, Oklahoma center, went down with a possible knee injury. I don't think it's come out how the severity of that, but look, if that could be a huge blow to Oklahoma, rebuilding an offensive line. They got some good players out of the portal, right? Beatonbaugh is going to coach them up, but if they lost their center for an extended period of time, that could be big. And Andrell Anthony apparently is having a little bit of an issue coming off the knee. So we'll see if he needs further surgery or if he's going to be back to himself by the time the season starts. But a couple of things there out of the spring so far for Oklahoma that are a little concerning. And that Troy Everett, look, if he's out for an extended period of time, that's Oklahoma rebuilt offensive line with a first-year starting quarterback moving into the SEC. There's some things that favor Texas in that game right now. And we'll see. Health is so big. Health and momentum is so big in that game. The one thing that Sark doesn't have to worry about playing Oklahoma this year, and you never have to worry about your guys being up for that game, but especially this year. I mean, Oklahoma celebrated like they beat the 72 Dolphins, okay, for a month after they beat Texas. So that will
it made their season. You
don't need to say anything if you're Sark next year for that game.
I like Jackson Arnold, I think, but I don't think Jackson Arnold's the answer for them to be a great team. At least
definitely not year one, right?
Year one, I guess, full season. My point being, they're in an interesting conundrum because I do think they're going to get better defensive talent. Venables is loading up on that side of the ball, in my opinion. But offensively, outside of the receivers, the offensive line is a complete redo. Now, it can be a witch.
Yes.
To your point, I mean, he can make lemons are, you can take lemons and make lemonade sometimes. But my thought on it is it's that this is not the perfect year for OU to be going into the SEC. They are a year away from being where they want to be on defense, and then a year away from having the quarterback having the experience, unlike Texas, which is going in with a third-year starting quarterback, 4 out of 5 starting offensive line coming back, a number of different pieces to the puzzle. So the difference being Texas probably needs more interior defensive linemen right now. So we'll see how it all goes. But OU is in an interesting – I've seen their predictions anywhere from 8-4 to 5-7, by the way, their first year. Now, I think they'll be better than 5-7.
I do
Don't get me
too.
wrong. I think they'll be 7-5 to 8-4, maybe 9-3, but they've got a tough schedule too. So we'll see how it goes.
I remember correctly, Vegas has them at 8 or 8.5 at the moment.
8.5 is the over-under on their win total?
But I believe so. Off the top of my head, I may be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's around there.
I think that the interesting thing about Texas and OU is going into a new conference like this, you usually either outperform or underperform expectations, in my opinion. Anytime you go into a new conference, and it's rarely right on the dot, is all I'll say. It is very rarely. You either outperform or underperform. We'll see which way Texas and OU go in the SEC this year.
I got them the other one that they have, and they've only released 3 early odds so far, but the other one that we have here is the Georgia game, and this is the only one out of the 3 that Texas isn't favored. The Longhorns are a 1.5-point dog, and the over-under on points scored is 55.5.
You know, a couple things with Georgia. Again, center position is interesting. Oklahoma, if Troy Everett goes down, that's big for them. But Jared Wilson has kind of been the talk of Georgia spring so far because Cedric Van Pran, multi-year starter at center. And I think that was one of the big questions as Georgia, the other 4 guys from the bowl game returned that started. But Jared Wilson apparently is having a really good spring. And if that holds for Georgia, Kirby Smart and that staff's been very high on Jared Wilson since they signed him. He's just had to have some patience. Listen, Texas offensive lineman, you have to have a little patience now. Jared Wilson's had patience at Georgia, and they expect him to be an NFL player. If he comes through at center for them, that's big for Georgia because they did lose some pieces. Branson Robinson at running back apparently is having a good spring. The guy out of Mississippi that's the first guy off the bus maybe on any team in America since he was 16 years old. If you never saw pictures of him in high school, unbelievable looking kid. Apparently he's had a good spring. Georgia, one of the things they want to be better at, improve guys this year, is getting quarterbacks to the ground again. They had a little bit of a slip last year from where they had been. They want to dial up the pressures more, get more hits on the quarterback, get quarterback to the ground a little more than they did last year. So that's really been an emphasis. Those are 2 things for Georgia this spring, the center position and the defensive line in the front 7 getting more pressures. But I don't know, Bobby, on that game. I think that's a complete coin toss game for me. I could see Texas being favored because it's home. I could see Georgia being favored because they're going to be ranked number 1 if they don't lose a game. So I nothing would surprise me with that. I do like the lower number.
Here's what I think. So it sets up well on Georgia's schedule. So if I'm a Georgia fan, I like the fact that the week before I'm hosting Mississippi State, who's not supposed to be real good this year, right, Jerry?
Yeah.
So
rebuild offensive line. They lost their entire offensive line.
Right. And so if I'm Georgia, I'm looking at it in the next 3 weeks of our next 2.5, 3 weeks. Texas is the last game before they get a week off. So they play Auburn. They play in consecutive weeks. They go Alabama on the September 28th. Then they go Auburn October 5th, Mississippi State October 12th, and then Texas October 19th. So that's a 4-game stretch, okay? Then they get a week off before they play their rival, Florida. So really, this is going to be the last of a 4-game stretch for Georgia. So in my opinion, that sets up well for Georgia.
Yeah.
Because, they're just saying, okay, all we got to do is win this one. then we get a week off before we play Florida, who's our rival, right? So I think that sets up well. And I do think that Georgia would be favored over Texas. You take the 3-point home field advantage, and you're really talking about a 4.5-point favorite for Georgia on a neutral field. Which, you know, I think they and Ohio State are the two most talented teams in the country right now. So I don't have a problem with them being favored, and I'm kind of surprised it's not a hair more, 2.5, 3.5 points, something like that.
Hey, Blake, we had a question from David Keith Williams up here. I'm trying to think about it. At 8:32 about defensive line recruiting that I wanted to hit on, if we could find that.
Yeah, so he says, Jerry Hamilton, realizing they are both great defensive tackles, which of Zion Williams or Hosea Sharma do you think would be the best fit next to Brandon Brown? Also, why are all the services so low on all three defensive tackles?
My answer on the first part is I'm not sure there's a best. I think Josiah Sharma can play either. I think Brandon Brown could play either. I think Zion Williams is an over-the-ball player at his best, or a tilt player, as Sean Rogers calls it, at his best. And those guys are going to rotate, so I don't know. Let's see what these guys look like as seniors. But I wanted to address the part why, the rankings are slow. Brandon Brown, I'm miffed by it. Now, maybe I'm the only guy that's been by O'Galley that's really taken a look at him, really talked to Coach Sands and that staff about him at O'Galley, and taking the time to really go see the kid. But Brandon Brown's an elite talent, guys. I mean, there's multiple colleges that think he's a top 2 or 3, if not best defensive tackle prospect in the country. And then Josiah Sharma, look, I mean, he was at Endercom in Sacramento. There's not a lot of people that have seen Josiah Sharma, bottom line. Josiah Sharma at Folsom will have more eyes on him this year. So I think his ranking will end up recalculating and moving towards correct. But I think both those guys are top 100 prospects in the country, maybe even top 50 prospects in the country. And so I think Zion Williams is a top 200 type kid in the country as well. I think all three of them are some of the best D tackles prospects in the 25 class that I've seen.
All right, guys, we're going to get back to this odds talk for just a second here. We looked at 2 of the SEC games, but let's look at the SEC Conference Championship game winner odds. And Texas here with the second best, Georgia, 185, Texas plus 310, and then quite a significant jump after that. Ole Miss, 650, followed by Alabama, LSU, and then Tennessee. So I'd say that's spot on the first 2.
Here's the issue that I think is interesting. Texas doesn't play 3, 4, 5, or 6. Look at that, guys.
Texas got a good schedule, guys.
Yeah, Texas does not play 3, 4, 5, or 6. Obviously, the tilt in Austin with Georgia, but that's going to be interesting. Texas has a favorable, to Jerry's point, Texas has a favorable schedule in first year in the SEC.
And I'll say this: the best news for Texas, probably, or Georgia fans, is if you play twice this year. That means you've either played in the SEC championship game or you've played each other in college football playoff. Either of those scenarios, that's good news for Georgia or Texas. If you play more than once this year, you've gotten about where you want to be.
Hey, Jerry, we got to ask this one real quick before I want to do an ad read here. But first, we need to talk to Ran Rodriguez. Akeelan Deere, the RB from Mississippi, committed to Ole Miss over the weekend. Are the Longhorns completely out of that recruitment? I got to ask, Jerry, where is the running back room? Because I thought from mine and yours perspective, I think it's pretty clear what they're trying to do at running back. Deere was a possibility, but he wasn't necessarily one of the 2 guys that they're kind of zeroing in on, correct?
No, Texas really liked Deere, but that's one even Tashard Choice wasn't going to win. And I'd mentioned that here or on OnTexasFootball.com. I put up an offensive recruiting board, and on Akeelan Deere, before he committed, I said Ole Miss or Alabama for him. That's where that recruitment had been going back and forth. Ole Miss, huge win because he's closest to Tuscaloosa, and we'll see how long that recruitment goes. But that's one I said on TexasFootballHere.com. That's one even Tashard Choice wasn't going to win. They went and sought Tashard, went to see him in January, but that was one. Even the great Tashard Choice isn't going to win them all, and that's one he was not. But again, Jordan Davison and Ricky Stewart are the 2 guys Texas is really zeroed in on. Ricky Stewart will be in Austin this weekend. He'll also be back June 14th through 16th for an official visit. I think Texas is a huge leader there. And I think it's important Texas takes an in-state running back in this class. And then Jordan Davison out of Mater Dei, he's been at the top for a long time of the board. I expect him to visit June 21st through 23rd. He just hasn't put out his dates publicly yet, but that's what I'm expecting. It wouldn't shock me if he wasn't on campus in April, but we'll have to wait for Jordan to let people know that. But those are the two guys in the competition for Jordan Davison. That's going to be Ohio State, Alabama, and Oregon. But I kind of like where Texas sits right now with both those guys.
Okay, guys. Well, if y'all are ready, it is time to talk about one of our sponsors here. And let's go with Gooder.
Yeah, guys, look, I mean, this is the first on Texas football marriage. I'm married to my Gooders. I'm just telling you this. They went everywhere with me. Whether I was walking 6 miles this weekend, whether I was driving. When I drive to Austin later this week, I'm going to have these bad boys on. Then I'm going to take them off. I'm going to clean them. But I'm all in on Gooder, man. I mean, these are stylish sunnies starting at only $25 a pair. There's over 50,000 5-star reviews out there for Gooders, right? I mean, and I told everybody I was at a beach volleyball tournament a couple of weekends ago, and they're kind of taking over. You saw the kids wearing the Gooders, and hey, why not feel like a kid with your Gooders on? But check out the new Pop G Styles, Vanguard Visionary, New Wave Renegade, Pop Art Prodigy, the Mod One Out, and approaching cult status. They're 100% polarized and only $25. I mean, think about how many times you or friends were in somewhere in the ocean and you lost your $250 glasses. Bye-bye, shark bait, gone. Get your Gooders, $25, great product, has a rubbery feel to them. I just love the way they feel. And Gooders, again, $25. If you want to support the show and try a pair, Gooder is giving On Texas Football listeners free shipping. You can go to gooder.com/On Texas all caps. Use code On Texas all caps for free shipping. Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, which you won't need, and 100% satisfaction, which you will have. Again, that's gooder.com/On Texas all caps. And yes, guys, you witnessed the first On Texas football marriage. I'm married to my Gooders.
And to the game. You're married to the game, Jerry Hamilton.
Yeah, you married to the game, baby.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to get back to this odds talk here for a second. We got two more to look at here. And this next one, Texas to make the 24/25 college football playoff. Those odds just came out this past week. Yes, obviously the favorite at -30. No, that would be the underdog in that at +184. So they're expecting Texas to make it, and they have the third best odds.
Third highest odds, yeah, behind Georgia and Ohio State. But Blake told me before the show. So third highest odds for Texas. I think Oregon's 4. So those are your top 4 as far as the odds right now, Bobby Burton.
Yeah, I look. We can talk about where this team was going, etc., and where this program was going. I'm just amazed that it's coming to pass. Look, I mean, 2 years ago when we started this webcast and talking about it, we were talking about what Texas might be able to do. That they were stacking talent, that they were getting becoming a better team. They were adding quarterbacks that could lead the way, as well as the team around it. Well, Jerry, we're here now.
Yeah,
that's what Vegas is saying. It's no longer, well, maybe you might do it. They're betting that you are going to do it. That's significant. I mean, that is as a person who watched the 2010s transpire. We were talking to Aaron De La Torre last night, right? And his son Alex played for Texas during the 2010s. He's like, look, it wasn't perfect that decade. They're still proud Longhorns, but he wants it. These guys want this as much as us, and so I think it's very interesting to see that. And have a feeling that that's where we're at in this thing. Texas has always played with a target on its back, but now it's even a little bit more, I think, because now they actually have the personnel to actually still do something about it right now and where they're going.
Hey, by the way, What's interesting about all four of those teams, and this is right up Bobby's alley, is experience at quarterback. Even Howard coming in from K-State. I mean, Carson Beck obviously going to be a second-year starter. Dylan Gabriel started 1,087 games. Quinn Ewers is going to be a third-year starter. And Howard at Ohio State has plenty of starting experience as well. So I don't know if that's factoring in, but I do think that's helping those teams right now.
And then the last odds we have to look at, fellas, is to win it all.
Oh, boy.
Texas, once again, third on this one. Georgia, the favorite, followed by Ohio State, and then Texas, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, and Michigan. And the top four there with the only less than 1,000 plus, or less than 1,000.
Hey, leave that up for a second while we talk about this. First of all, no pressure, Coach Sark. Have a good day. But Coach Schaefer talked about the expectations at Texas in his press conference before that elite game. And he talked about how he talks to Steve Sarkisian about the expectations of being at Texas. And it's no coincidence that the word obsessed is being used by Sark. And I think obsessed, especially even more so after last night with Coach Schaefer. The expectations at Texas, that's what these guys are here for. And Sarkisian's building back of this program is why we see a plus 700. And again, have a great day, guys. Texas staff, no pressure at all. But it's interesting when you look at that. LSU, first-year starting quarterback, 2 first-round wide receivers, lost a lot on the D-line, have to really build a defense again. Harold Perkins can't do it by himself. I would actually have Ole Miss ahead of LSU if I was making these right now, and maybe even Ole Miss ahead of Alabama. Honestly,
interesting.
Well, Ole Miss is favored ahead of Alabama in the SEC, which is interesting, but not to win the national championship.
I think what's going to be one of the more fascinating things for me in the college football season is the marriage between DeBoer and Jalen Milroe. I think that's going to be so interesting to watch. How much of the scheme playbook does Kalen DeBoer put into play this year with Jalen Milroe? How big of a jump does Milroe make in the spring under DeBoer and then in the next year? I think it's going to be one of the more fascinating things to watch because he's a different quarterback than what DeBoer's had. Okay, totally different. DeBoer will maximize what he can do, but in maximizing what he can do, it's going to be how much of DeBoer's scheme can he actually put into play in year one at Alabama.
All right, y'all. Well, we have a lot of questions that we need to get to after looking at all that stuff. And let's just start here at the top from Cordy. He says, how hard is it to get to the Final Four, let alone win a national championship in the big three revenue sports, football, basketball, baseball?
Basketball is brutally difficult to make. I mean, you just think about it. I mean, NC State, what was that, their first Final Four in 30 years that they're going to now? Alabama's first, is it? I might be wrong on that. Purdue's first since in a long time, right? And it helps Zach Edey gets every call. He's treated like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I'll never understand it. But that's another discussion. But, I mean, just think about Duke. When's the last time Duke was at a Final Four at Duke? I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's been a few years. It hasn't been a long time. It's been a few years. I mean, North Carolina goes from being in a national championship game to not even making the tournament the following year to coming back and then getting upset again and not making the Final Four. Final Fours are difficult. Miami in the Final Four last year, not in the tournament this year. Eric Musselman got Arkansas close 2 years in a row, lost to UConn, who anybody would have last year, maybe except Texas. They've been healthy last year, but then didn't make the tournament this year. Basketball is brutally difficult. Women's basketball, easier than men's because there's such a discrepancy in those 116, 215s. Your odds of getting to the Sweet 16 as a 1-2 seed are better in the women's tournament, so your odds go up. But just to make a Final Four in the men's game, I think is very difficult. And now that the elite NBA G League Ignite team is going away, we'll see if 2 or 3 of those guys come. If a Scoot Henderson had played in college basketball for a year, wherever he went, that team would have taken like 12 notches up. So Will those guys go to the overtime elite league, or will they kind of matriculate back into college basketball? Because, one guy makes even though he's a freshman, if you have experience around them, makes a massive difference. The level of the guys that have been going to the G League Ignite. I mean, Ron Holland would have gone to college for a year. If that's at Texas, how much does that change the Texas team? Probably considerably, considering he was the wing that Texas needed and the rebounder and could really play in transition. When's the last time Indiana has been? Ryan Nelson said exactly. I mean, it's Final Fours in the men's basketball are very difficult.
Yeah, and not to mention the luck involved in sports, period.
Think about how the injuries have impacted the NCAA tournament the last year. Kelvin Sampson's had really bad luck on the injury front. Shed goes down against Duke, but they are already without Tugler, who was a really good freshman rim protector. Terrence Arsenault didn't even play all year. So the three of their very key guys were not really available when they got to the Sweet 16 because Shed got hurt during that game. So, I mean, UCLA last year, I thought would have probably been a great team to beat UConn. But think about the injuries they had late in the year in the Pac-12 tournament. Then you get into the tournament and you're a shell of what you were. I mean, Bona didn't play. They lost the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. He didn't play in the tournament. So injuries have really impacted, to your point, Blake, about luck, the NCAA men's tournament the last 2 years.
I got to be honest. I think it's harder to win football than it is basketball.
I think it's going to be now.
And I'll say this, and I'll tell you why. It takes more than just one or two players and a coach in football.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have a great coach and one or two great players in basketball and go really far. Okay? You cannot do that in football. You can't just have one or two players in football and a great coach. It takes a building. I just believe that
I agree with you. Now
basketball can be dominated by a fewer number of players, and they play offense and defense, etc. Basketball, I think, is actually easier than football. Football is I still believe it is the number one team sport. I mean, you have to have 22 starters. You have to have a good coaching staff on both sides of the ball. There's difference. I mean, I'm a firm believer that football is tougher than any other sport to win a national championship, which, however, once you get to that, you can repeat more easily, in my opinion, in football than you can basketball. So what I mean by that is what Danny Hurley's doing at UConn is phenomenal. So let's take that aside. But once you get to the mountaintop, you're replacing like Nick Saban did. I think getting and winning the national championship in football is harder, but once you get there, you can repeat more easily.
I think it's going to be as hard now with the 12-14 team playoff. I think for years, the really top dogs, it was easier in football to get there than it is basketball to get to that Final Four. Now, some people would argue every game matters in college football. Well, yeah, there's 12 versus 36 games 34 games before the NCAA tournament. But I do think now with the 12-team playoff, which will last a couple of years, right? Then you're going to 14, eventually 16. I do think once this thing gets to a 16-team playoff in college football, it's going to be extremely difficult because of injury. As long as that scholarship number is at 85, it's going to be really difficult because there's no month off to prepare for a college football playoff game anymore. Your injuries that impact you late in the year are going to impact you early in the playoffs. So that being healthy and staying healthy, health is going to be a huge part of that luck piece to Blake, to your point, for teams in college football playoff moving forward.
All right, guys, this next question here from Wyatt. He says, since y'all cover Texas football year-round, how hard is it to create content daily and stay motivated to continue covering the same topic? And Bobby, before you answer, I was thinking about this last week, and I was looking to do like a piece or social media piece on Texas transfers. I went to all these other team sites. Even finding press conferences online is incredibly hard unless it's a school like Texas. So Texas makes it a lot easier on people like us, in my opinion, as opposed to somebody covering Duke, for example.
No, I mean, look, I'm sitting here. We're sitting here on a Monday morning in the middle of spring practice, and there's 1,300 people online or so between YouTube and Twitter and everywhere else that we simulcast this to, and that's part of who you are at Texas. As for me, and is it easy or hard? Some days are harder than others, for sure, to think about what we want to talk about. But when you have, I don't know, odds come out about whether or not your team's going to make the national championship, when you're sitting here and you're able to go to a practice or two or several and talk about what's going on as far as movements along the depth chart, up and down, sideways, young guys, it's fun. And a lot of us love the Longhorns. And for me, motivation is never a problem. Texas is my team, and I'm a sports fan, and I always have been. And it's a fun way to pass the time for me, as opposed to, I'm not a politics guy, for example. You won't find me worrying about that stuff. I worry about the Longhorns, about college football, and other stuff like that. But it's just what I enjoy it. So each day it's not a grind at all. It's a labor of love for me.
I can say that, the years of being part of ESPN Under Armour All-America game and the camps around the country helped me quite a bit, because the Big 12 didn't do it for me, guys. It was like I was drinking NyQuil all day or something. The Big 12 was boring to me. And I'm so excited now that Texas is moving into the SEC, because look, when you've done the job I have nationally for so long, you go see all these kids around the country, and you know really where the talent is and why the talent is what it is in some of those states. And now that Texas is moving to the SEC, I'm jacked up individually, but also for Texas fans. I couldn't be more excited. I'm lucky enough to have gone, like Bobby has, to a lot of these venues over the years with our job. And I just can't tell you, from a fan experience standpoint, whether that's Georgia, Florida, all the teams that are from the SEC that are going to be coming to Austin, because their fans are going to be excited for that as well. But for Texas, especially, the venues you're going to get to go to in future years, I think, are just going to be so exciting. And obviously it helps when you're good again, right? But just the excitement of the conference. And we're talking, obviously it's football dominated talk here, but for the baseball fans, the baseball venues are unbelievable in the SEC, right? I mean, and you just think about, all sports in the SEC, I think, are just going to be more exciting for your fan base. I think the best days are ahead, and that's got me jacked up, because I hate to say it, but I was just, the Big 12 it bored me more times than it excited me, a lot more.
You mean Kansas versus Iowa State didn't get you excited like Alabama, Georgia?
That just doesn't.
Yeah, no, I agree. My point though is, the other thing I love is recruiting.
Yeah,
and so melding that in with the SEC certainly helps, but knowing what's coming next for the Longhorns is something that I've always tried to understand and get a feel for, and also pass along to others, And so for me, these kind of websites or video shows or whatever we're doing, or talk shows, it's always about trying to be one step ahead, and that is a little bit of a game to me, to be honest. And so it relates to a passion I have with the Longhorns. So it's very natural for me to be thinking about, what's next? What do we need to be thinking about and communicating? And hopefully it comes across that we really do like the Longhorns and are genuine about that, and that we are motivated to provide quality content for you guys. And we're not perfect. We know that. But hopefully it comes across at least as genuine, and that we're making an honest attempt to give you guys the best we can.
And by the way, to Bobby's point on the recruiting, just think about this. When I go through Florida, I actually went to Orlando, Florida, to see Cedric Baxter to cover the University of Texas recruiting. Look, I wasn't sure that day would ever happen, honestly. So you just think about that from our perspective, loving recruiting. I'm going to be out on the road a lot here coming up when the spring evaluation period starts, and I'm going to be in the Sunshine State looking at guys that Texas is recruiting. I wasn't sure that day would ever come, honestly. So I mean, just thinking about that, this has taken me to Saraland High School 3 times already to see KJ Lacey. I mean, in Mobile. Those things weren't really going to happen without this move to the SEC. So recruiting's fun, football's fun, all sports are fun.
All right. Well, speaking of fun, Bobby, why don't you tell us about one of our newer sponsors and Autograph?
Yeah, absolutely. Big news, Longhorn fans. We're excited to be working with Autograph, co-founded by the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. Talking about a Michigan man there. Autograph is where real Texas fans get unreal rewards. It's the first app to track and reward fans for loving what they love most, turning passion into access and experiences. Founded on the belief that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans, they've been sending true fans to the biggest games in college basketball for $16. Yes, $16. As we gear up for football season, this means you can score discounted tickets to marquee matchups. Scan to download the free Autograph app in the Apple Store and use referral code ONTEXAS. That's referral code ONTEXAS and see where fandom takes you.
And I thank them for sponsoring, guys. Well, we got a lot more questions here, so let's get to as many as we can. And we'll start with this one from Casey. He says, was the first team line on Friday still the one with Neto?
Yes. That's what I was told. That's what I was told. So that goes left to right. Kelvin Banks, Nato, Umezulu, Jake Majors, right guard, DJ Campbell, right tackle, Cameron Williams. Now, if we there's also a question from Houlihan Golfer, any media viewing available this week? We think there might be tomorrow, but the University of Texas Sports Information Department has not put that out yet. If there is, we will be there and try to remark about that. I'm not convinced that NATO is going to be running first team all spring long. I think they'll move Hayden Connor back in. I think they'll give Cole Hudson a shot to run with the ones at times. They're going to – Kyle Flood does a great job of mixing and matching and giving guys 3 or 4 days at a starting role or within a piece of the puzzle, so to speak. I'm not sure what'll happen. We'll if it's available tomorrow, we'll be looking on the outlook or on the lookout for it.
By the way, a question. I did not see that Duncanville's playing in Alaska for a high school game September 31st. I will look that up. That's very interesting.
What?
That's crazy. I'll have to look that up too.
I've not seen that one.
Duncanville football is going to go to Alaska?
They're probably playing a California team up there in some sort of showcase that's never been tried before.
Alaska Airlines gonna be sponsoring that. I mean, what?
I know they're not playing Anchorage High.
I know that's what I'm saying.
Okay, it's an April Fool. It's an April Fool's show. Get you going. See, the recruits are going to get you going today. It's April Fool's, so there you go. Good one, Decorian. Now you, hey, Decorian. Now I wasn't joking. You better get faster.
Because I remember Alito playing the team from Mexico in some games like that. So that may not be out of the question. I mean,
at this point, Duncanville can't find 10 teams to play them, so nothing would surprise me. Hey, Folsom High's looking for a couple of games, Coach Samples. If you're nobody wants to play Folsom in California, nobody wants to play y'all in Texas. Maybe make that connection and go play Folsom next year.
There you go. All right. Todd Lacey, happy birthday to your son. I just saw that in the chat. Byron Willman says, what's the intel on Warren Roberson? I feel like there was a lot more talk about him in camp as a freshman than there is now. I don't believe that I've even heard his name so far this camp.
Well, that you may not have heard his name, but I've actually seen him a couple times. He's running backup cornerback right now. He's actually one of the top 4 cornerbacks. Now he's moved up to, I think, 3. So the top 4 have been Manny Muhammad and Terrence Brooks as your starter, Gavin Holmes and Warren Roberson as your 2s. 3s have been Kobe Black and Wardell Mack. Okay. Well, Manny Muhammad has been injured. He tweaked his hamstring, and so he hasn't been full go, including Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of this past week. He actually did not participate full go. And so Roberson right now running the number 3 overall corner. He has looked good. the issue with Warren is he going to break through, right? There's a lot of talented players right now at Texas that have to break through, whether they're patient or there's injury or what have you. That's just how we're situated right now.
And our next question, guys, comes from Colton. He says, does the Texas offense eclipse the 40 mark in points per game in 2024? We need Quinn to stay healthy and for the offense to resolve the red zone issues.
I don't see the 40 points per game, guys. They didn't average that this past year in a weaker conference. I don't think they'll pass that this year. They're losing, and you can say what you want about who they're replacing everybody with. I mean, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, they're all good receivers. Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, really good receivers. Now, Quinn Ewers' improvement could tick you up a notch. I agree with that, particularly in the red zone. But I would think if you average 35 to 37 this year, that's a big-time win for the Longhorns.
I would say this. Could Texas average 40 if they put – for the season, if they put like some massive 66 number on ULM? Maybe. But I think that more important than the season average is what are they going to average against Michigan in an SEC play? That's the number I'm looking at, and I don't think that will be 40.
If they can get the 31 to 32 in conference and against Michigan, they're going to win 10 games. That's my opinion.
It's worth
and
noting,
be in the college football playoff.
Only 4 teams last year averaged more or 40 points or more a game in college football.
Only 4 last year. Who was that?
I should have left it up. Hang on, I'll give it to you.
No, you good.
I know it was Texas, or I'm sorry, not Texas. It was LSU, USC, Oklahoma, and Oregon, and all of them at 41, except LSU was at 43.3.
Okay.
So, all right, guys, this next question here is going to come from Nate, and he says, are y'all seeing more emphasis on playing the ball in the air from our defensive backs?
I think there's more emphasis on press coverage.
And that hopefully leads to that, though, Jerry.
Yeah.
There definitely is, to Jerry's point, watching in practice, there's absolutely more intentionality towards playing press. Not saying that they're going to go full or whole hog into it, right? But I'm 100% sure they're going to press more this year. How much more? I don't know.
And the pass rush off the edges has to tie it all together for Texas defensive backs. You have more chances to make plays on the ball if the quarterback's timing's thrown off, the throw's rushed, and maybe inaccuracy comes into play. If a quarterback has all day to throw it, and they can slide the pocket and you can't do anything about it, and your timing is uninterrupted by a high-level quarterback, that's a much tougher game for the corners.
And Jerry, I know you've talked about the spring game being very hyped this year. Phil McIntosh says 19 days until the biggest spring game in Texas history. Let me ask y'all, do you think it really will be the biggest spring game in Texas history?
I think most anticipated in 20 years, probably for me. I think that's the expectations now after making the college football playoff last year. And I'm not diminishing 08 to 09, right? But Texas won the Big 12. They made the college football playoff. Quinn came back. You're going to have all these guys drafted, 3 straight top 5 recruiting classes. I just think the buildup is there similar. And that doesn't mean the result's going to be the same, but the buildup is so similar. And what's also changed is the portal and early enrollees. I mean, 17 early enrollees, 7 new guys from the portal. I mean, Texas is at 85 guys right now for spring football practice, 85 scholarship players. That years ago, you had what, Bobby, 70 guys, 68 to 70 guys, maybe 65 some years for spring practice. This is just such a different look now in college football because so many kids are early enrolling and the transfer portal. Sometimes spring, you were just kind of left with, okay, well, what's this team really going to look like after the freshman class comes in? Now you can walk to the spring game, walk down Bevo Boulevard and go into DKR on April 20th. And you're not only going to get to see Quinn in year 3, Arch in year 2, you're going to get to see Colin Simmons. You're going to get to see Trey Moore. You're going to get to see all these guys you've been reading about, maybe that you haven't seen in person yet. So from a fan perspective, first year in the SEC, top 5 ranked preseason. We've talked about all of the lines today. Obviously quarterback Quinn coming back, Arch is number 2. All the things moved to the SEC. All these things coming together off of last year. I do think it's the most anticipated in 2 decades.
I want to say this. I go back a long period of time with Texas, right? The 2004 to 2005 season was probably the most anticipated season. It was coming off of Vince Young's performance in the Rose Bowl against Michigan, right? And going into that was a special moment in time where a lot of people were excited about Texas football. Then you had 08 going to 09. Very similar, but maybe a little less so because they had been the Longhorn fans had been spoiled somewhat by recent success, right? This feels more like that going from 04 to 05 to me, because you have the quarterback coming back. You have young players that you're excited about, including a big name guy like Arch Manning. You have a number of different pieces to it. You're going into a new conference. Just the look and feel to me feels more like 04 to 05, but maybe with a tad less confidence in your team because Vince was such a dominant player. He maybe changed that just a tad. But also, to Jerry's point, in those springs, there wasn't a lot of new toys joining the game, right? In this spring, you have a lot of new players. You mentioned Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden, right? Amari Niblack. These are going to be key players for the Longhorns in 2024. And we haven't even seen them in a Longhorn uniform yet. Whereas back in 2004, 2005, you'd seen pretty much everybody that was going to play a major role already. So I get where Jerry's going. You also have the unveiling a little bit of Arch Manning. It'll be his time to actually run with the ones every so often when Quinn goes out. So you'll see a little bit more. And I do think that, there have been 20, 30,000 people. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 40 to 50 at this spring game.
And that actually was going to be the next question here from Jason Washington. What sort of attendance can we expect from the spring game? I was trying to find the highest number ever for attendance for Texas, but the highest number I've seen so far is 51,000, and that was actually back about 10 years ago. So I don't know what the number was last year. All right, Bobby, before we move on, can you tell folks out there about Longhorn Wealth Management?
Yep. John Donovan is our partner with Longhorn Wealth Management Group. Today may be April Fools, but don't be fooled by some fast-talking investment or insurance salesperson regarding your financial future. Let John Donovan, who is a certified financial planner, do for you what he has been doing for Longhorns, alums, employees, and all family and friends for more than 30 years, adhering to his fiduciary responsibility to provide you the very best in independent investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions. John's not only a certified financial planner, he's also a proud Texas Ex's Life member, and he and his wife and all 6 of his siblings are also UT grads. John has served more than 15 years on the Texas Ex's board, so he understands the passion, commitment, and pride of all UT family members. Avoid the foolishness of working with a non-CFP advisor and give John and his team at Longhorn Wealth a call, 972-707-4900, or visit longhornwealth.net for your free 90-minute consultation. That's 972-707-4900, or visit longhornwealth.net. Hook 'em, John.
Hey, by the way, Blake, we're talking. Somebody asked how many times we thought ESPN Game Day would have Texas this year. I think Texas, Michigan, that's probably a big noon ESPN Game Day. That's an obvious one, right?
That's a layup. Yeah, that's a layup,
especially when you're looking at the schedule. And after that, you see how things play out, right? I mean, Georgia, obviously, if Texas and Georgia, that's going to draw game day, right? I mean, what that led me down this rabbit hole. Current ticket prices as low as on ESPN for the schedule, $4.39 for Texas at Michigan. Tickets as low as $4.39, $3.96 for the Cotton Bowl, $3.80 for Georgia, $5.19 for A&M. There's your 4 games in demand from a ticket standpoint.
Chris Del Conte needs to up those ticket prices, baby. That's what he's thinking. Chris Del Conte's looking at that and go, I could get $5 more per ticket out of that sucker. He can't do it now. He's already set the number, but those are crazy numbers. Crazy.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we talked about the spring game a little bit. AJJ Sports says, does the spring portal open before or after the spring game?
It's April 15th to April 30th is your spring portal window. So, yes, conceivably, guys could and this happened last year, right? The receiver, Bobby from Florida that tore his ACL. I can't remember his name, but Sark actually got him in the spring game. Then he transferred out. Jaden Alexis, great human being, by the way, great dude. So I mean, look, there'll probably be those conversations. Sark will have conversations with kids before the spring game, and there will be probably some guys playing the spring game that are going to transfer out of Texas afterwards.
And then let's talk about recruiting for a little bit. Vivek says, Jerry, do you now predict Texas will end up winning out for Doran Moore? Man, why would he not want to come here? I'm going to put you on the spot, Jerry Hamilton.
I mean, look, and then there's been some questions about RPM for Jordan Davis in Ohio State. Look, I mean, some of these recruitments, you just got to let them play out, especially in the NIL day and age. I think Texas has a lot of things going for them in the Doran Moore recruitment. First of all, 3 visits, families from Austin. Obviously, mom still has family in Austin. She grew up in Austin. So there's a lot of offense, all those things playing into it. Texas is also in a lot of big boy, Sark calls it deep sea fishing, recruiting battles. So you're not going to win them all. You got to hang in there and win your share. But I think Texas has some things going for them in regard to Doran Moore. Look, and if you're recruiting against Texas on Jordan Davis and outside of the NIL game, which is important in that recruitment, the reality is if you're Ohio State, you can sit one of your lines you can use in recruiting is our guys are about to go to the NFL, our top 2 guys. Is that going to happen down there? How's that running back room? We have a little more need up here, even though we're Ohio State. So there's a lot of things that are going into recruiting right now. The real nitty gritty of these gets into June for the official visits.
I want to say this real quick. We'll have a graphic up for you guys tomorrow on all the April 6th visitors. But if you missed the early part of this show, we've had several hundred people join us as the show goes on, like we normally do during the morning. The big news really from a recruiting perspective, Jerry broke the news earlier today that Zion Williams, defensive lineman out of Lufkin, will be on campus this weekend. He also talked to the Folsom High coach yesterday. That's the Folsom, California high school coach, head coach, Josiah Sharma, big defensive lineman. So some big defensive line news really in the last 24, 48 hours. Sharma really, really enjoyed his visit to Texas. Longhorns involved along with Georgia, Alabama, Washington, etc. And then Zion Williams, Texas and LSU kind of going head-to-head there at this point in time. You add those guys, Jerry, along with Brandon Brown out of O'Galley, Florida, potentially, Lance Jackson out of Texarkana, Pleasant Grove. Those are elite defensive line prospects.
Yeah.
I think that Texas could be taking a real step forward with defensive line recruiting this year, like a quantum leap a little bit, to be honest.
And then you mentioned Ohio State a second ago, Jerry. Tyree says they now have 3 top 10 corners committed, and they picked up another one over the weekend. So are they still pushing hard for Dorian Brew?
Sure. I mean, a big-time player, going to push for the guy. And look, no, it's not a lock. The guys they have committed are all going to sign there. So a long way to go until December. And Dorian Brew's a versatile guy. He's not just a corner. He's a guy with a body type that could, he could play safety. He could play more of a nickel too. I mean, he's not just a for sure 100% corner. It's scheme dependent from college to college on him. But yeah, you don't generally walk away from guys like that unless they tell you, I'm not considering you anymore.
There you go. And Roger G says, who do you think would become the primary running back target if Davison did go to Ohio State?
Yeah, I think that's to be determined. I mean, that would be to be determined. Let's see what happens on that recruitment. Let's see how things play out there. I think Jordan Davison will be in Austin before June, and I think he'll officially visit June 21st through 23rd, barring a major change in his timeline.
And then
I would add Ricky Stewart's a primary regardless.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a 2 running back class, maybe 1, but they want to.
Okay, guys, and then this next question here, we're going to actually talk about somebody that transferred into Texas from Ryan Nelson. He says, Bobby, is Nye Black one and done?
I think he wants to be. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think he has the tools to be because he will test extraordinarily well. Like, he will test better than JT Sanders, without question. I don't know that he's ready, though. Based on what I've seen physically, he still has some growing up to do. Now, I'm not saying he's far from it, but physically, he doesn't look like an NFL player yet. He looks like a future NFL player, if that makes sense to you. So he's got about a year. I think he's going to try to go regardless, because that's who he wants to be. But I think he might be a guy that would be well suited to come back a second year. Because I will say that the tight end out of the tight end out of Michigan is likely the first tight end off the board next year too. So if his goal is to be the number 1 tight end in the country, he's probably a year away from that.
All right, guys, we got time for just another question or two. Colton wants to know, does Sark take advantage of having coaches like Coach McVay as a guest speaker? And does he pick his brain for concepts or maybe some situational play call ideas?
Without question. I mean, so they actually do that regardless. Sark's been out there to the visit with McVay. Coaches that are friends, it's interesting, they don't spend a bunch of their time doing that, but they do spend some significant time kind of talking to one another. And, Sark has mentioned Andy Reid as a guy that he looks at his offense and says, what can I follow from him? McVay is another one. Shanahan is another one, right? Because he is West Coast concept based. And those 3 guys, Shanahan, Reid, as well as McVay, are all West Coast concept based. And so what they do kind of fits what he wants to do. And so he can actually pick and choose and actually may have a question. He's already going to have seen the plays. So that's where it's at. Red zone efficiency is going to be big for Texas this year. We've had that question a couple times in comment. I think it's going to be Quinn having to step up a little bit and create a little bit more.
And then our last question for today is actually kind of a twofold one here from Ekim. He says, good morning from Rockford, Illinois. Who will be the leading tackler this season? Jerry, I'll let you answer this part first, though. Does Purdue stand a chance of beating UConn in the final game?
Despite what we've seen from UConn, anybody can be beat. I think UConn's a heavy favorite. I think that's a tough matchup for Purdue, because I do think Purdue will beat NC State. I think the team of destiny kind of ends. But I think UConn will beat Purdue and cut down the nets once again. Cam Spencer, I love, for those that have kind of followed me on the basketball recruiting side, I love Cam Spencer out of Rutgers when he jumped in the portal. I thought, and Texas made a run at it, but at that time they already had Asmus and Hunter, and there was not enough ball to go around. Not that Texas would have beat UConn out anyways for him, but Texas made an effort there. But Spencer didn't see his fit. But Spencer, I think, was huge for UConn out of the portal. And I think that's really what makes Danny Hurley the best right now in college basketball, now that Jay Wright's retired. I think in the modern day of college basketball, he's the best at roster construction I've seen. These recruits, the Gerald Hawkins last year, Donovan Clingan, these guys weren't ranked top 15 in the country. They're all ranked 40 to 70, 30 to 70 in the country, 2-year guys at the college level. Then he pieces that together out of the portal so well. I mean, the point guard came from East Carolina, a kid from El Paso, right? So he does the best job of roster construction in today's day and age of college basketball, which I think is the most difficult task because of timing in portal and in the high school recruiting landscape, which is now going to change back a little bit with G League Ignite going away. That impacts you on 3-4 guys, but 3-4 big guys. So I think UConn will cut down the nets again. I don't think Edey will get every call against UConn like he does against a lot of people. And what was the first part of that question?
Who's going to be the leading tackler?
By the way, I want to answer the second part of that. No, I don't think Houston, if they were healthy, could have played. I don't think they were a good matchup for Connecticut. Houston couldn't score enough points in that game to beat a Connecticut. They, even as good a defense as Houston played, you still have to be able to score 75, 76 against the team greater, equal talent or greater. And Houston couldn't have done that on UConn. No chance. Leading tackler, Bobby, I'm going with Anthony Hill this year.
Anthony Hill or one of the safeties. I don't think there's any doubt that Anthony Hill, I think Benda is going to be a guy, but I don't think he's going to have that many tackles. Anthony Hill will be a 3-down guy for Texas. And Jalen Ford was leading tackler the last 2 years in Pete Kwiatkowski defense for a reason. It funnels to that position a little bit.
Okay, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. We want to thank them.
Cleaning off my gooders, getting ready for tomorrow, guys. Getting ready for tomorrow. Clean off
them and Autograph for sponsoring today's show. I know we got another live show coming up later today. Bobby, tell folks about that.
Yeah, the winning drive with Bob Shipley and Rod Babers, as well as CJ Vogel. We'll be talking about a little recruiting news that may be going on, talking about that April 6th recruiting weekend, as well as practice starting back up tomorrow morning. Some other news and notes as well from Coach Shipley, Rod, and CJ.
Hey, Blake, you have a little noise in the show on today. We didn't have the read, right? But you got. Can you play the noise for everybody? Just look. It's not a show without the manscape. Yes. Yes. That's your Manscaped read for today.
Bobby loves it, I can tell. All right, guys. Well, as I said, that's going to do it for today's show that just went all over the place. But for more Texas coverage, be sure to head on over to ontexasfootball.com so you can get the latest news, notes, and just join in on some great discussion. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We would definitely appreciate that. As we went over 40,000 subscribers, we can't thank you guys enough for all of your support. But please, if you haven't already, we would love for you to be a subscriber and then ring the bell so you're notified anytime and every time that we post a video or go live. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.